Great. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our session today, this webinar covering AI agents in action, specifically as it relates to supply chain management and orchestration. So let me start with a few introductions. I am Christine Andrews. I am a senior solution consultant here at Dataiku, specialized in manufacturing and supply chain, and I've been in manufacturing for over 25 plus years in various capacities. So I look forward to leading a little bit of the discussion early on, and then I'll let Romain introduce himself as he will be sharing the demonstration.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. So my name is Romain Menini, and I'm Senior Solution Data Scientist at Dataiku. I've been building actually most of the manufacturing, supply chain, and energy solution you will have on the catalog, and I will walk you through this demo of supply chain tonight.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Romain. And look forward to actually getting some questions here as we go through this. So first, a little bit of like basic setting of the stage here, if you will. And for those that don't know Dataiku, let me share a little bit about what we are. Dataiku is analytics orchestration platform. Analytics can take many different forms, right? Most common and the reason you're probably here today is around artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we'll talk specifically about agents and also a little bit about how that relates to the more traditional AI ML approaches. As a analytics platform and orchestration engine, Dataiku, part of the reason that our customers leverage our platform is for a couple different things. One is we are cloud and infrastructure agnostic. So you can leverage Databricks, you can leverage Snowflake, Azure, GCP, AWS, all of the classic approaches. So to be able to blend a multi-cloud strategy in support of analytics. And the other big part of it is that we aren't a bespoke niche, analytics platform provider, which it allows for, your supply chain professionals, your manufacturing professionals, so your leaders across your various domains throughout your business to be able to drive insights, answer questions, leverage AI and machine learning to help them be more productive and do that in a transparent, very scalable way. So in other words, really we're about how do you support decentralized analytics pipelines in a consistent manner. So that's a little bit about who we are. Now let's get into talking about AI agents, and then we'll talk specifically about how they fit into the supply chain. So first of all, what is an AI agent? And it depends, right? You kind of get a myriad, I guess, variety of answers depending where you're going for this kind of information. But behind it all, there are large language models when we talk about agents. So those of us that are familiar with Gemini or ChatGPT or any of the other number of AI chatbot assistants, that's fundamentally what's behind an agent. However, what agents do beyond just what a traditional LLM approach is that they allow for a really automated, autonomous decision making. You don't have to go to that extent, but they do provide a means of going beyond retrieval to actual helping with the execution of tasks in a very seamless way, as well as prescriptive recommendations on what to do next. And we'll talk about how that applies. And it can apply, by the way, broadly across various different domains of supply chain, right? And they also, the other thing I'll say about, why people are investing in AI agents and why it's getting a lot of focus right now is, I guess, to use an analogy, right? If LLMs made NLP, natural language processing, more usable and valuable, AI agents have made, artificial intelligence and the decision-making therein more usable and attainable for a lot of the organizations we work with. And in the end, the reason why that matters is we can talk about agility, trust, and all of that's very important for supply chain, but fundamentally it is about competitiveness and cost. So if you think about why do I care about agents, Really, it should be about understanding, are we doing things in the most efficient way possible so that our supply chain professionals can be more productive, right? And they're not having to hunt for information. We'll talk about how agents can help empower that, specifically in supply chain, but that's fundamentally where we see a lot of our customers getting benefits from agents. It's also about being able to kind of orchestrate and automate some of these traditionally manual processes. But right now, I'd like to jump into really quickly a poll question. We talked a little bit about just basic understanding of what agents are and why organizations and leaders are investing in them. But I'm kind of curious, how is your organization, your enterprise, currently using AI agents? You'll see, so let's open up, Stephanie, you can open up that poll question now. It should be open. And yeah, and I already see we have votes coming in, so that's great. And it's okay if you don't know, right? Or not at all, just getting started. So really kind of curious on the breadth of maturity across, and we'll, as those results come in, we'll talk about them here in a little bit. Okay, let me go forward while we're waiting for the poll. So feel free to keep answering that poll. That's great. Looks like most right now, by the way, are on the just getting started, which is good, which is pretty appropriate. On that probably means there's some experimentation, and we do definitely, that's usually how customers start. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the use cases, for supply chain itself. Here we go. All right, challenges. So anybody, I don't know the breakdown of everybody here in this webinar today, but if you're intimately involved with supply chain, a lot of these terms are not going to be, very foreign to you, right? The challenges across supply chain are, if I had to say what the biggest kind of challenge overall is, really around the wrangling and understanding of data across myriad systems. So supply chains in and of themselves, right, imply a lot of different departments and necessary silos, by the way. This is not a conversation about breaking down silos, but it's really about how do you leverage those silos effectively and how do you actually bridge them with analytics. But the challenges are around, with that, a lot of manual processes. So there's a lot of ad hoc reporting, a lot of like clear to build type initiatives that are just have to be brute force initiated. Still a lot of Excel macros out there, and of course, tremendous amount of BI tools. Add to that fragmented data sources. So a lot of our customers have myriad ERP systems, different types of implementation of ERP, warehouse management, MES systems abound, and it's quite diverse what that could consist of. Fragmented supplier information. So usually not everything you need to properly manage your suppliers is in your master data in ERP, your supplier master data. And then finally, outsourcing. So that can take a lot of different shapes and forms, depending on what industry you're in, but outsourcing from everything of core manufacturing, of course, to 3PL, third-party logistics providers, things along those lines. And that can just add to that data complexity and where you have to go for information. And if you look at some of those statistics out there, only 53% of organizations report that they have adequate master data quality. So what does that mean? Well, limited visibility. The quality, the data quality hampers some of that visibility. But without a doubt, this has been the case for many years, but when people talk about supply chains, they talk about transparent supply chains, right? And traceability of products, traceability of suppliers, not just tier 1, but down to tier 2, 3, 4, et cetera, which all have an impact, right, on supply chain risk. The data quality issues we just talked about, that's rampant, and that's endemic, by the way, throughout organizations. That can be incurred everything from technical debt, outdated ERP configurations, all of those types of issues, and just human error. And then harmonizing across different users. So a good example of that would be inventory information. So inventory information can be reported different ways in different parts of the organization. All of that can produce opaque analytics, whether those analytics reside within your ERP system or separate supply chain management system. But sometimes that explainability and transparency of the analytics can be lacking as well. And then finally, I would say one of the most, I have a lot of conversations about is adaptability. So everybody talks about supply chain resiliency, but that in and of itself implies you have to be able to adapt to the unexpected, right? Which may sound like a paradox, but what we find a lot of customers do today is they need the ability to import and actually input new and ingest new kind of data signals, new data sources that maybe with their fixed ERP configurations they can't easily support today, because there's always a new disruption around the corner and evolving requirements. So with that, how do agents and analytics generally help? So these are examples of agents at use in supply chain. But if you think about the manual effort, so there is that process automation aspect to it. I think you'll start to see some aspects of that when we get into the demo as well. But that process automation allows for greater reuse, more seamless automation of some of these workflows with better analytics involved, and doing it in a higher level way, right? Not just updating things based on a fixed input, but being able to adapt to kind of new requirements. The worker augmentation, this, by the way, is without a doubt probably the #1 use of AI agents in supply chain today. It's usually less about what I'll say the intelligent business chains, which is about taking agents and knitting them together for a more seamless kind of a dynamic, right, workflow execution. But worker augmentation was without a doubt the biggest example. And it makes sense, right? It's a little bit lower risk. You're still getting the people involved. You're improving the productivity and the efficiency of your supply chain professionals. And that's really where we see a lot of growth and a lot of current interest in agents today, and particularly in supply chain. Now, with all of that, what I'll say is that those are the ways that you can overcome some of those challenges by automating things, by improving the productivity, by seamlessly wrangling, combining data, and then surfacing up some insights for things like safety stock optimization or better demand planning. But really, when you think about it, agents can apply. I actually get this comment a lot where people will say, oh, we're not ready for Gen AI, we're not ready for agents. And I would challenge that in most cases, because really they can apply in any part of your supply chain organization. It's just how you're going to leverage them may be different. It's not going to be for probably full, autonomous, right, execution and updating of master data, for example. Necessarily, you're not going to start there, but you absolutely have the ability to surface up, and that's what we see our customers doing today. And there's some examples of it, things like supplier risk, or where should I how can I optimize sourcing, for example. And then how should I adjust my demand plan if I want to, or if I'm going to change some discounting structures? In other words, how does my price influence demand? All of those things can be agentified, if you will. Same with routing optimization for better dispatching and better load planning. And when you bring all of those together, that's really, obviously, it's the whole point of an integrated supply chain, is to really set the stage for that kind of seamless, intelligent business automation and orchestration. So what are some of the use cases and the journey is often a question I get. And it is a journey, right? Any kind of analytics. And when you're talking about agents, that's also going to be a bit of a journey as well. So what I will tell you, these are some examples, they're not exhaustive, but there's some examples of how we see customers progressing oftentimes on this journey and implementing things like Gen AI agents. And they might start with, for example, a clear to build, which is more descriptive analytics based, but then moving on to things like safety stock optimization, different ways to facilitate that, but basically tying that to demand plan and looking at variances and then updating safety stock on a quarterly or even monthly basis. Materials forecasting, so that's more your dependent demand, where you're looking not just, and we have customers that are doing that today as well, we're doing a better job essentially of that material plan and that material planning component. And then finally, when you start to have that basis, obviously you have to understand what your material plan is and have some handle on that. That's really when we start to see a little more interest in the Gen AI agents for things like inventory optimization. So that would include, it'd be a little bit more encompassing, more than just safety stock, right? Things like minimum order quantities, reorder points, and those kinds of metrics. And really that's about process optimization being able to dynamically update some of that information, like I've said, minimum order quantity, lot sizing, and things like that. One of the areas, though, I'm gonna spend probably a little bit more time here, because this is one where we're going to show a demo here a little bit. But the other part is that this is probably the area that is getting the most attention. I see the most traction today among enterprises, and that is around supplier management. Spend analysis, that's your typical descriptive starting point. You're probably doing that, your organization are probably doing that in some capacity today, but oftentimes it needs to be enriched. There's, and as you want to go through, for example, some optimized sourcing use cases and supplier risk management, you'll oftentimes, we have organizations that discover their spend analytics aren't what they need it to be to do the proper kind of categorization of suppliers. And then it's supplier scoring. And, we certainly have customers with hundreds of parameters that they're using, believe it or not, for things like supplier scoring. So that's why it lends itself to something like machine learning. But where I am seeing, and we have been seeing at Dataiku, a lot of traction is around a couple of things when it comes to supplier management. One, contract. So contract management and contract insights. And then also supplier risk management, and kind of corollary to that, this optimized sourcing. That's really about using agents to do a couple things. One, to surface up, and that's what Ramaz was sharing a little bit, to surface up some of those risks, operational performance risks among vast supplier networks. Being able to, then the agent, what the agent could do is not just surface up those risks, but then provide recommendations on what you can do to mitigate those risks. And then similarly on the optimized sourcing, being able to then retrieve who should when it talks about optimized sourcing, who's the lowest cost supplier based on the certain lot quantity or quantity that you delineate. And then also, what about optimized from, say, a sustainability angle or ESG metrics angle? So really, that's another area that agents are very, very good at helping to define, because, again, being powered by those large language models, they can kind of scour publicly available information and also help determine who's the lowest cost, but also who's most compliant. So that's really, and again, I think also because of supplier management being an area where there is a lot of documentation, it just naturally lends itself to kind of an LLM-based approach. But again, that's not the only area we see it. And then finally on logistics. So this is another area where there's a lot of opportunity for more automation, and that's around what we see typically is here around fleet management. And there is actually some opportunity for agents, and in some cases we're starting to see a little bit more of that, agents in the fleet management side, but you could think of that as more maintenance planning. So recommended maintenance planning based on routes, based on utilization, and also the health of the fleet or particular vehicle. Then delivery scheduling is a lot of times the next kind of use case that a lot of our customers pursue, and that would be around understanding lead times, understanding delivery times, and when those are going to so that you can better kind of coordinate with both the logistics providers, the transportation providers, but also keep the customer apprised of what's happening as well. But really, when we talk about a couple different areas for worker augmentation, and actually here on process automation, it's really around route optimization on the automation side, but warehouse capacity optimization. So that's really about surfacing up. So when you think about there's a lot of analytics, that's the other thing I'll point out. When we talk about some of these agents, behind them, at least the projects that we work on, a lot of times there are some underlying AI machine learning models outside of the LLMs that are used to help define those kind of prescriptive recommendations. The agents do a great job, though, of being able to go beyond just the model to explaining it in an intuitive way, and also then going to step B, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of, okay, what does that mean for the longer term and what could you do about it? So in this case, it's really about arming that warehouse management team, so your supply chain leaders, with the information necessary to then predict what the warehouse capacity is going to be, where they should allocate, right? And that gets into a kind of an optimization discussion. And then where should they allocate inventory based on the demand plan? So those are the kinds of fees that go in to something like warehouse capacity improvements. So I'm going to pause here for another poll question and ask everyone, where in supply chain, I see we might have some questions coming in too, but where in supply chain do you see agents as most impactful to your organization? So we can go ahead and open up that poll. And we'll start to see, I believe is that one. And yeah, and it definitely on, by the way, to review the previous poll, it was just getting started. The majority of the people that answered just getting started. It looks like, okay, yeah, demand forecasting and supplier management are the two areas that I'm seeing get the highest votes for impact on your, yeah, and then okay, supplier, and then inventory optimization is coming up as well. But definitely supplier management, demand forecasting, and looks like inventory are going to be the top thing. Doesn't surprise me given the climate and the challenges in most supply chains today. So while everybody is continuing to answer that poll question, and I'll tally that in a little bit, but feel free to keep on answering that. Let's talk a little bit about where we're going on this demo. So what we've got is a demonstration. Wanted to show you an example of agents at use for supply chain management and orchestration. And the one that you're going to see is our supplier risk management assistant. What it does is a couple things. There's different components to it. But one of the things it does analyze is we have a lot of customers that are impacted by tariffs. I mean, everybody's always had some tariff component, right? To trade compliance. You all have trade compliance departments within your organizations. But the volatility and the extent of the tariffs is what's really changed and put a spotlight on a lot of these supply chain challenges and, supplier networks, honestly, challenges. So some of the questions that I know a lot of you and your organizations may be asking and may have some answers today is, what is the impact of changing tariffs on, current orders, on outstanding purchase orders for sure. And then of course, what's the impact in the future, depending, and being able to simulate and analyze that. Also, though, what are you going to do about it once you know what the impact is, right? That's always the question on any of these analytics discussions is, well, how do I address this? So one way to address it is, right, by diversifying your suppliers. So in order to do that, you need to understand which suppliers are going to be most impacted. So who do I need to prioritize if that's in fact going to be one of the tactics that you employ? What could be adjusted to mitigate those tariff impacts? Could be everything from changing sourcing for components. It could also be, there is obviously also a price component, and being able to look at, increasing prices as a result of the raw material impacts. How do you pass that on? How does that impact your demand? And being able to understand those kinds of issues and impacts, consequences. And then finally, which items are most impacted. So it kind of goes along with so the suppliers understanding who is, what I need to prioritize from both an item perspective or component perspective, raw material perspective, as well as a vendor perspective. So what I'm going to stop sharing here in a bit, and then we can go through a demonstration, and it is going to be here of this supplier management assistant. And really, this is a workforce augmentation type approach, where if you're a procurement manager, purchasing analyst, purchasing specialists, you would leverage this supplier management assistant to help you surface up risks from tariffs, also risks from performance delays among your suppliers, and use that information based on, then the agent will tell you, give you some recommendations of what you could do next. And then what you do with that information, right, as a subject matter expert, as a procurement analyst, will be up to you. But it really does help, I think you'll see, streamline the entire process of retrieving information, surfacing up supplier risks, and then understanding how to mitigate those risks. So I'm going to stop sharing now and hand it over to Romain.
Yes, thank you very much, Christine. I'm checking your second poll actually, and I see that most of the people are actually interested in the supplier management. So I'm happy because that's the topic of my demo. So I'm saved, I think, and I will again share my screen as well. Let me find it here. Nope. Here. This is the one. So what I'm sharing with you right now, it's a Dataiku project in which we have what we call Agent Connect. It's a web application, but I will show you in detail how it's made. And you will see that there's no code involved here. It's a component of Dataiku that we are shipping for the one who have this LLM mesh. And I will start with showing you just a few examples of what could be done with this supplier management assistant. Christine showed you already the architecture, the global architecture of it, but I will go a bit more into the details of the project itself. One thing we could imagine on that is to have estimation or an analysis on the cost impact of tariff. So let's take this example. The user is asking what is the cost impact of tariff on the current orders. And then we have this phase of reasoning in which the agent is searching into the historical orders to get the tariff rate by suppliers. So it's doing the operation by itself. And then we got this result, but it's also checking the total transaction cost by suppliers. And then from that, we have kind of a analysis of the results after this reasoning part. So we have this result where Speedline and GearPro are the highest total transaction cost. And they have high tariff rates as well. And we can check that indeed they have a high tariff rate compared to others, especially auto supply here. And then the next step would be what is the cost impact of switching from Speedline? I took Speedline as an example because it was one of the two mentioned, to an alternative supplier in terms of course, tariff. And then same thing here, what we have is basically some reasoning steps, and then we have some results, which is an analysis of it. So we have kind of a reminder of what is the duty rate of this supplier, what kind of parts are supplied, and then, maybe we could switch to a GearPro here. And for example, we have this example of the headlight here, in which we see that we could do some saving, and especially thanks to the tariff reduction. And we see that here we have the import duty rate advantage, in which GearPro is lower than Speedline. And so we have also, as usual, some recommendation, but still the agent is very cautious, saying that before making any switching decision, you should maybe consider supply reliability, quality, consistency on GearPro and other stuff. But still, that's a first step, a first analysis that is done only by checking the current data, and also that is done autonomously. And that is very powerful. Then the user is also asking if there's any component that Speedline supplies that GearPro cannot cover. So here, this one is a bit tricky because we are not connected to any catalog, but it's still checking in the historical data of orders. And for example, we have found some products that are not available from GearPro apparently, and especially the water pumps. And so we got kind of impact analysis. So here we have, I think, some recommendation that if we want to switch from Speedline to GearPro, we would need to check for a strategy for sourcing these kind of components, and especially the water pumps, to make sure that we can cover it, and also maybe find another supplier for these parts. And so that's why here I'm asking, are there other suppliers beside GearPro that can provide these water pumps? Because it says here that it's very one of the biggest problems we have for this. So same thing, reasoning step, and then we found some suppliers. So at least in the historical data, we have few suppliers, and here we found somewhere in the knowledge bank. I will explain you what a knowledge bank is a bit later, but it found in the knowledge bank that Denso could be a potential alternative of it. And that's interesting because it's not coming from the historical orders, because actually maybe some other of our suppliers can supply these water pumps, but maybe we have never ordered to them for some reason, like pricing or other. But still, he said, hey, we have the annual report of Denso, and maybe they could supply this kind of water pump. And so here, the key findings and the recommendation we have is definitely makes sense, actually, because it said that, okay, GearPro does not provide everything. So Speedline seems still to be the most relevant supplier, but also maybe you should check with Denso that is already one of your supplier, that maybe they could be or become an alternative supplier. So that's it for this first scenario. The idea is really to show that it's really an assistant, and it's also performing steps by its own thanks to these reasoning steps. I have another one which I think is shorter. Here I'm checking the lead time, the delivery lead times, and so I'm asking what are the average delays per supplier. And so we have some things. I don't think it's real data, by the way, because this is huge. So I hope it's not real data for sure. So same thing, it's highlighting few suppliers that have high delays in day. Also now I'm asking the on-time delivery rate for the most important supplier. And I said here it's important, the top 10 suppliers. And then the output of it is a bit strange because we have, you see some suppliers have a 100% on-time delivery, but actually it's not the top 10 suppliers. When I said the top 10 supplier, I was, in my mind, I had this thing, I was thinking of the most important suppliers in terms of total transaction cost, for example, but here it did not make it. So I'm re-asking the question on the high spend suppliers that have a poor on-time delivery performance. And now it's including this total spend and the on-time delivery rate. And now it's interesting because we see that Speedline, that's actually the conclusion of the agent, that Speedline is the highest spend supplier, but has a poor on-time delivery rate. And then we have GearPro, which is the second one, but also the second worst on-time delivery rate. So we should probably definitely change or mitigate the risk around these two suppliers. I have not continued this scenario, but we should here do a bit the same thing as previously, that okay, for Speedline, which could be the alternative suppliers to mitigate this risk, or same for GearPro, what type of products are shipping, and can we have some alternative supplier for these products that GearPro and Speedline are shipping. And so here the idea is really to find the riskiest part of our supply chain and try to mitigate the risk, which is the classic problematic of the supplier managers. And the last scenario I would like to show you actually is, so the name is not great, which suppliers account for the largest share of our total spend? So this is the first very simple question. It's just a group by behind the scene, and we got this result that we already know, Speedline, GearPro. And then I'm checking if we have any critical components that are sourced from a single supplier. And this is important for us because we see that Speedline is a very important supplier for us, but maybe it could be critical on some parts. And then it's doing this analysis again. So reasoning step first, aggregating some data from the past historical data, and then here we have some parts with only one supplier, and the total spend for this part number. And same thing, we have a kind of conclusion on that. This part, for example, is quite critical for us. And so I would like to do a cost analysis. What is the impact if we change this part? And actually, I asked for the top single sourced components to put them, to mitigate them around like 2 suppliers. And so here we have this new, again, reasoning part, and we have an interesting result, which is the current situation for these 3 parts, and also a cost impact estimation. And the interesting part is that for this part, we don't have access to the catalog as well. And so we see that this is probably something we should add to this project, because it's estimating an industry average, actually, but it's not very tangible, I would say, figures. It's just an estimation, but still it's not hallucinating. It's not saying, hey, you would have this additional cost. It's just saying it should be around this level of increase. And it's suggesting few things like risk mitigation, and also try to negotiate the prices. And here the idea is really a kind of call to action to say, okay, you should contact other suppliers for this part, to try to have a risk mitigation, even though the price increase will be there for sure, but still that's important to have this. And so here in only a few prompts, you have like the top 3 parts you should focus on. Of course, you don't have, because it doesn't have the data, but the important part is that it's not hallucinating. But you have orders of magnitude of standard industry average, but also 3 parts that you should focus on if you want to do some risk mitigation over several suppliers. And now I will a bit deep dive into this project. So you probably know Dataiku already. So this is a classical project, and as any classic project, you want to go to the flow. If I go, zoom out a bit, we start with some input data. So basically what we put here is the supplier orders, and we also added the duty tariff into it. So we have this table in which we have some parts and some orders for each suppliers. We tried as much as possible to add some description of columns. I think this one is better. Yes. So here for the agents, it's important to know what part numbers refers to. And so we try to put some description of the column everywhere. So it really helped them limit the risk of hallucination and also have some better results. What you see here in the order history preparation is that we know from the user's question and from the use case we want to cover, we know that the agent will need some aggregated data. So for example, I will take this example. It's for each part number, this air filter, which are the suppliers, and what is the average price. So we can see the difference of prices for the same part along the different suppliers. So we know that this kind of data preparation steps will be required for this project. And so that's why we already did them into the project. The idea is to avoid the agent of doing this operation by itself all the time. So it's really speed up the process. We have also described the table. So we know that the agent knows what's inside these different tables. So the idea is to have all this table prepared, and now the agent is ready to answer the question, and it goes faster. Because overall, in this kind of use cases, when a user is prompting an agent through this web app interface I show you, it's very important to have, I would say, decent, at least, response time. And so this kind of data preparation really helps on that part. And then, so here it's for the demo, for demo purpose, we recreated the demand forecasting dataset, but we asked the agent to use only the summary one, which is for each part number and each supplier, the forecast quantity estimated. This is just to show that also I haven't showed that, by the way, in my scenario, but the agent could leverage this demand forecast. And if we go back to the flow, we also have this agent part. So actually, we see that we have several agents in that project. The first one is this one is an agent that is able just to perform some simple SQL queries and to actually check the different data sets. So we have limited the data sets to the one we really want to make the agent to make some search on it. And then we have this other pink part in which we have uploaded some annual reports from the different suppliers. And from it, we have created a knowledge bank. So we have this REST-IP. So without any code, we are just extracting the embeddings from the annual reports and storing them into what Dataiku call a knowledge bank, which is basically a vector store. And then from that, we have defined here a supply chain risk agent in which we have several tools. So we have the main LLM of this agent, and then we have two tools, the knowledge bank search with a few short description of this knowledge bank, what is in this knowledge bank, and when should the agent use this tool. And also we have a dataset query. So the agent, so this agent can call the other agent as a tool to perform some operation around supplier orders, tariff, duty tariff rates, and all this data available in the project. And from that, we are using something that is pre-built in Dataiku now, which is called Agent Connect, which is this pretty simple chat interface you have seen. And to create that, you need to go to new web app, and it's what we call a visual web app. So this is something that already exists to Dataiku. So you don't have to code anything to have this, well, let's call it a chatbot agent with agent. And then you just have to add it to your project and configure it. So you have to, of course, an LLM, main LLM, which is the one creating the answers. Configuring a few things around historical dataset and stuff, and then you choose your agent. You can have several agents, and then that's it, actually. Then you have a few other configuration because you can add some pre-selected question like this one, but overall it's quite easy to do. In just few steps, without any code, you can create this supply chain assistant really easily, and that's really the strength of Dataiku for that around agents and LLM. I think I've covered everything I wanted to show you, so maybe you can stop sharing and go back to question if you have some.
Yeah, thanks, Romain. I think, yeah, we do have some questions in the chat. I've tried to answer some of those.
Cool.
Yeah, but I think there was, thanks from Alexander, thanks Romain. This is all based on index vectorized data, or is there a text to SQL live search over some data lake? That was a question we had.
Sorry, I missed the question. Could you say it again?
Yeah, from Alexander, thanks Romain. This is all, but is this all based, on index vectorized data, or is there a text to SQL live search over some data lake?
Yeah, it's performing some SQL, so both actually, because some of the data are prepared, as I show, and some are live actually SQL queries. So that's why I'm using two agents. One is here to do some SQL operation, I would say, and the other one is here to do the knowledge bank search and also to prepare the answers and do of course, the reasoning part.
Okay, hopefully that Let's see. I think we have a couple other questions here because we were done with the demo. Sorry, I was gonna go through a few of this Q&A. And we have what does, let's see, does your agent directly connect to all ERP data? Do we need to create a middle virtual layer for data that is available for your agents? In this particular, okay, I guess in this particular instance, we're using ERP data for that demo. And I would say that in terms of all, that's a, yeah, I have to say it's a pretty inclusive term. You wouldn't need an agent to connect to all the ERP data. It just depends on what you want this agent to do. In this particular instance, we're only really leveraging vendor master data, so supplier master data, and PO. In this case, it was actually open PO type. The history, I think, for the last 3 months. So hopefully that answered that question. Okay. Let me see. How was the knowledge bank created? Did we cover that part, Homa?
Yeah, maybe I cover it a bit quickly, but basically to create a knowledge bank in Dataiku, it's very easy. You just upload some files into a folder, into your flow, and then you have this recipe. I don't remember the name of the recipe, but you have this recipe to create a knowledge bank. And well, you definitely have to select some models, some embedding models, but that's very easy and without code. So this is quite an easy step. I think I don't have the details here. I think, yeah, I'm checking, but I don't have the details of the embeddings and stuff. But really, that's something that is easy to do. Of course, you need an embedding model, and you can select a different type of vector store. But this is really something that has been automated in Dataiku now.
And then, Ron, we had a question about, I'm going to try to tackle a couple of these. Are you using RAG and MCP for queries?
Not MCP, because here it's only into Dataiku, so it's not using MCP. It's really generating some SQL queries. And yes, we are using RAG through this knowledge bank creation. That's what we call a RAG, actually. So this tool named knowledge bank search is definitely the RAG agent, actually. Yeah, it's kind of a tool of an engine, but yeah.
Okay, and we have a couple other interesting questions. Harry asked about risk of hallucinations. What is the likelihood of hallucinations? How do you minimize that risk? I'd still be a little uncomfortable at even 99.9% accuracy. It sounds like it. I mean, that's common in manufacturing supply chain for making important decisions. Well, I can talk on the business side. You can talk about the managing hallucination risk. Yeah, thanks. Do you want to go first on the hallucination?
Yeah. Maybe start. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, on the business side, I'll say that that's one of the reasons for those of you that are here at the beginning, the majority of when we talk about agents and use in supply chain, the majority of it is for workforce augmentation, not for actually supplanting some of the decision making that your purchasing leaders and specialists are going to make. I'm a strong, and I do a lot of, by the way, core like manufacturing in the make area use cases as well. And I advocate for the same thing there, just from a trust perspective and just the risk aversion culturally that happens with any large enterprise. So from that standpoint, it's still like one of the recent projects we worked on we actually started with web scraping for optimized pricing for suppliers, but then moved into using some API approaches for approved suppliers. But even that would not necessarily like initiate a purchase order, for example, from the lowest cost supplier. What it does provide is the information and a link to that buyer, for example, saying this is the lowest cost for this particular part. Now, if you want to buy, here you go. Hopefully, so from a business perspective, I guess administrative control perspective, that's a way you would help mitigate some of that risk. But Homa, you can talk about hallucination management now.
Yeah, but I also I agree with you actually that overall, well, we are in 2025 for the record. Gen AI today should not be the final decision maker, I think. So it's a decision support layer for sure. It really accelerates analysis. I have shown, flagged some issues, but I think humans still validate before acting. I think this is very key for today's agent. And to limit the hallucination, I think it also first depends on the model used. For sure, I think I've seen that also in the question that I think it's important not to let the model generate answers from the open web. I think it's better to ground the model on curated data sources and also to control the scope, just like we did here. Actually, we could say, okay, search for information on our suppliers, but it would be higher risk of hallucination. And I think it's much better to, like here, we uploaded some structured and also, I would say, controlled documents. So for sure, you have limited information in this document, but we know that this is a good source of truth. And so that's why I think it's important to limit to this kind of document that I would say but the person who's creating this project is mastering at least, so that just make sure that these information are correct and verified. So that's very important. That's why also we created this RAG into the project to ensure that these answers are tied to this source document. Something I haven't shown, by the way, is that we also always have the source document. So when the agent is answering something on a document, we have the source of it. So that's super important and really helps also mitigate the risk. And then we have, for production, we will have some validation steps. So let's say we have a sample of maybe 50 questions. That typical question could happen in the chat, and we just check that for these 50 questions, the answers are correct. And also, on top of that, knowing that it's only checking, so we put that everywhere in the different description and in the different prompt inside the project, is that if you don't know or if you don't find one information or another, don't invent it. Just say, I don't know it. And this is super important to add this kind of guardrail a bit everywhere in the project to make sure that we limit the risk of hallucination. So yeah, I think that's a big topic, but overall, this is how you limit the hallucination.
We have a couple other questions. One is from Rania. How is the agent better than a RAG?
It's not better. Yeah, I've seen that. It's not better. Agent is not better than RAG. It's different. The RAG is actually it's a pipeline for retrieving some information from document and generating for it. And the agent is different. It's adding reasoning and orchestration step. So basically in a RAG, you are just doing generation from documents, from information, where the agent the idea is to add reasoning. After this reasoning and orchestration step, in which the agent decides to call, for example, the information from the RAG, because from the description, the agent thinks that this result or this information should be in the RAG part. So that's why we used both RAG and the agent. Basically, in the RAG, we are answering questions that the agent has prepared, and so the agent generally solves some high-level task where the RAG answers questions.
Great. We also had, I think Thomas had a question about, I would love for you to talk about this for a while. Are we able to have the agent format the output as a graph rather than just an answer?
I don't think, yeah, we could have that. I don't think it's possible because, as I said, what we're using is called Agent Connect, and so it's built by Dataiku, and I don't think it's available yet in the, and I'm not sure even it's in the roadmap, by the way, but for sure that's something that could be possible by the models. not all of them, so you have to pick the right one. But I don't think right now it's possible into Dataiku.
Okay, Pavan also asked a question about chat history, user profile data sets in the web app. Are they created automatically, or do we have to create them before we create the web app?
The profile, you said?
Yeah, remember because you have the chat history, user profile, those data sets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not using, oh yeah, you have to create them before create the web app. But at the beginning, I think you can create them right from the configuration page of the web app, actually. And so, yeah, I think it's done automatically, and then it has the right columns. So basically, it's just creating a new SQL database, a table, sorry. And so then you have your web app setup. I think you need the history and the user profile data sets, these two, but it's really straightforward as long as you have a SQL connection.
Okay, we also had a question around, do we have any standardized scoring mechanism? I assume they mean, I assume that's meant for supplier scoring, and the short answer is no, we don't have a standardized. What you saw was representative of the reasoning power of the agent based on the annual report information, but also the PO history and on-time delivery performance.
Yeah. But if in your company you have a kind of standardized scoring mechanism, it's really easy to add it actually to some table and then to pre-compute it, just as I did some data preparation in some tables. It's really easy to add it and to use the agent refer to this scoring system.
Also, a question we can see, if a human operator, so if somebody were to reject, like say one of the recommendations, provide feedback, I think is essentially here what we're going with. A low-cost supplier, give reasoning back to the agent. How would this information impact future reasoning suggestion from the agent? I will tell you, I mean, actually, Romain and I could talk about how I kind of, I guess, audited to some extent, right? The early days when we first put this together and how we collaborated on it. Dataiku, that is actually an important part of where we're going with our product roadmap, and adding a more kind of intuitive, governed way of allowing SMEs or supply chain professionals, in this case, purchasing analysts, to audit, provide feedback, so that could be used to improve, I guess, some of the prompt engineering, as well as the approaches from an algorithm standpoint. Romain, you could talk a little bit more on technically how you would incorporate that.
Yeah, right now I'm not sure that by default you have this kind of, I think you have this chat memory because you have the chat history that is saved, but I'm not sure it's generalized for the model. So this is something that would need to be implemented, but is a bit more advanced, because if we want to share this memory or this information to all the users, this is something that need to be a bit more. It's something more advanced that we have not developed yet. I think you could do it in Dataiku, but I would definitely use some code to maybe fine tune or maybe enhance at some point the agent. So probably fine tuning is not the right answer at that stage, but we would have to think of this option.
Yeah, I think some of it on a product standpoint, Romain, was around some of the prompt engineering aspects, and improving the instructions.
Yeah, also that would work definitely, but this would be something more manual than you would not be have something automatic for this improvement.
Okay, I know we've only got 1 minute left. If we bring the standardized score, how do we embed that? This is a kind of just a general question there, but if we bring the standardized score, how do we embed that inside your tool, so that would become part of that input, right, and that data set? And so, yeah, what Romain showed you, obviously we constructed that, or it was an example from some customers that we've worked with, but that would be another input, potentially, right? One of those recipes that workflow, that analytics workflow. You would have your supplier score there, and you would just inform the agent that that's the data source for scoring.
Yeah, and we could also think of another tool that could happen. We can create another tool to evaluate a standardized score. But yeah, this is not something we have implemented so far, but it could be something that could be created quite easily in Dataiku for sure.
And yeah, I apologize. I know we've got a couple more questions around, but I know we're at time. So I want to be kind of conscious of that. We're happy to follow up, because as you, I know Alexander is a good one around AI and supplier management. Actually, we see a lot of interest in that, just for some of the reasons I mentioned in terms of what's going on with supply chains today. And then we can also talk about leveraging AI to, that's some of the data consumers, business users, absolutely. And that's a good focus for where and when an agent might make sense, because we have some questions around that. But I appreciate everyone's time, consideration, and input. This has been great interaction, so we really appreciate it, and hope it's been helpful for all of you. Thank you so much.